With McValue at McDonald's, you don't just get deals on the drinks. You get deals on McDonald's drinks. So when you're breaking a sweat, embrace the chill without breaking the bank. And when your crew is running on empty, keep your wallet full while refreshing the squad.
Ace the vibe check with drinks like lemonade, frozen Fanta Blue Raspberry, or any size drink for just $1.49. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
What does the future hold for the dream of a made-in-Canada electric vehicle supply chain? Just a couple of years ago, government and industry had high hopes for a revolutionary transformation of the auto sector in this country. Thousands of jobs, billions of dollars in investment, turning Canada into a powerhouse in the production of the next generation of vehicles. The vision: an end-to-end supply chain, from extracting critical minerals to finished cars rolling off the assembly line. The government has committed tens of billions of dollars in grants, subsidies, and tax breaks in the name of the EV transition. But now, with Donald Trump apparently keen on wiping out Canada's auto sector, is the EV dream dead? Or is it just on pause? I'm David Smith. Today on The Big Story, what's the outlook for Canada's auto sector and the $50 billion in public money earmarked for its EV transition? Last week, Honda announced it is delaying its plan to invest $15 billion in an EV and battery production facility in Alliston, Ontario, for at least 2 years. Not only is the company delaying the new investment, it's also moving some production of its popular SUV, the Honda CR-V, to the U.S. to avoid tariffs on cars made in Canada destined for export to the U.S. market. Two other big companies, Stellantis and GM, have also paused or cut production at Canadian plants in recent weeks. Given the current economic crisis, will these companies still be looking to expand their Canadian footprints in the coming decade? That is the question, as tens of thousands of workers and tens of billions of dollars hang in the balance. Here to help us answer that question today on The Big Story is Tim Dimopoulos, the publisher of Automotive News Canada. Hi, Tim. Welcome back.
Hey, David. How you doing?
Great. Great to have you here. So, I wish it was under better circumstances, but let's dive into it. Some disturbing news, frankly, about the future of the auto sector and specifically the EV transition this week. What should we make of this news about Honda? The government had already really built up this as the beginning of a new era in Canadian auto manufacturing, this vision of us becoming a powerhouse in building electric vehicles and exporting them to the U.S. and around the world. The math seems to have changed quite a bit now with Honda pausing this $15 billion investment. What do you make of it?
Well, the math has certainly changed, particularly on North American demand, which is the big driver here. And I think that's what's driving the decision. Demand is kind of cratered for EVs due to different political circumstances, as you know. And it's causing companies like Honda and others, I should mention, to rethink their investments globally around EV production. Now, tariffs probably accelerated the decision to a degree, but a sharp decline in demand is probably what the main issue is here. And the plant was supposed to create 1,000 new jobs and many more downstream jobs. But it looks like that's going to be put on ice, at least for the next 2 years, according to Honda. The good news is that people who are currently working at the plant are likely unaffected by any sort of potential job cuts.
Yeah, and EV demand, one side of the equation, but tariffs are the other side of the equation. And for people who might not understand or know that much about the dynamics of the auto industry in Canada, these EVs that they were going to be producing, not just for the Canadian market, right? The business case is built around, as I understand it, having access to the American market, exporting vehicles there. If they were to just serve the Canadian market, it wouldn't be economical to put up this kind of investment. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, yeah, most of what we make here, whether it was the EV production that we were planning on producing, as well as even the ICE vehicles that we make here, or the gas vehicles that we make here, are largely destined to the U.S. Market. So it's whatever happens from a demand standpoint in the North American scope, particularly in the U.S., really affects our ability to make cars here for export.
And Honda's not the only company involved in these major EV subsidy schemes with the federal, provincial governments. Stellantis has a battery plant, I understand, is already operating in Windsor. That's called Nextstar. Volkswagen, based on the latest news stories I can find, is still planning to build a $7 billion facility in St. Thomas, Ontario. Both of those companies, though, also have U.S. operations. So what do you think could happen with those other two companies? Do you think it's possible they could pick up and move south, or at least hit the pause button as Honda has done with the EV investment in Canada?
Yeah, well, Honda was supposed to get $5 billion in federal and provincial money. It didn't get any of it yet. So Stellantis' Nextstar plant is already producing battery components, and they're making their way into the electric Daytona, which is starting to sell on both sides of the border. But after the initial capital, the Stellantis plant got to build the factory, most of the subsidies are based on output. So it's based on a per kilowatt hour output scheme, essentially. And so they got to be making things to get money. Same with Volkswagen. It's they're set up in the same way. They got to actually start producing things before they get like the bulk of the money. They did get a little bit of money to capital, that is, to kind of build the plant, but the plant hasn't been built yet. It's just flat land. I think it's been leveled and ready to build, but nothing is happening there right now. It's the work is slowed down quite a bit. Now, as far as moving these operations down south, I think it would be very difficult for any manufacturer to pick up and leave right now, particularly because of the investment climate in the U.S. Commercial land and labor is actually more expensive in the U.S. than it is in Canada and in most other markets, and access to the critical minerals and components would be farther away and potentially subject to duty. So no company is going to make long-term investments in electrification overall that they haven't made already if the market demand doesn't seem to be there or even improve. So I think you won't probably see St. Thomas's Volkswagen plant and the Nextstar plant sort of just pick up and leave overnight and settle in the States.
Okay, yeah.
It's practical, yeah.
Yeah, that is good to know, right? Because, a lot of people obviously very concerned. You see all these headlines about the tens of billions of dollars in public subsidies. As you point out, a small portion of that has gone out the door in terms of capital for building the facilities themselves, but the bulk of it is quota-based subsidies and tax breaks, really corporate tax breaks. So if they're not actually producing cars, they're not getting subsidy money. So that's point one. Point two is very interesting, though, on the cost of labor and capital and land. In the U.S., it's not easy for a car company to just say, oh, okay, well, if there are tariffs, we'll just set up shop in the U.S. Oftentimes when the president, Donald Trump, talks about it, he makes it seem like it would be that simple, but it's really not, right?
Yeah, it's not. It takes a lot of time, particularly with EV plants. They require a lot of planning and a lot of thought in terms of where to put them in regards to the overall supply chain, which has been, turned on its head right now anyway. But these things don't happen overnight. In fact, they don't happen over the course of a couple of years. It usually takes several years and hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to get them up and running. So it's not an overnight thing for sure.
With McValue at McDonald's, you don't just get deals on the drinks, you get deals on McDonald's drinks. So when you're breaking a sweat, embrace the chill without breaking the bank. And when your crew is running on empty, keep your wallet full while refreshing the squad.
Ace the vibe check with drinks like lemonade, frozen Fanta Blue Raspberry, or any size drink for just $1.49. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Let's talk about the trend line right now when it comes to electrification of auto production in North America. I noticed this week another car maker, Subaru, is rethinking, quote unquote, rethinking its EV strategy as well. What are they saying about that decision?
Well, you know what? OEMs, in general, the car makers, have a history of pivoting fast with market demand. This is not new, whether it's Subaru or any other company for that matter. A couple of years ago, almost all of the manufacturers said they were all, except for Toyota and Nissan, said they were all in when it came to EV. So most of them were looking at a complete EV fleet by 2035, some of them even earlier. A year ago, everybody kind of adjusted for softening demand and said, well, we'll push those targets a little further on down the line and offer more of a balanced product mix. Now they have to adjust for cratering demand, and that's what's happening. What is more critical to watch when it comes to these plans is what's going to happen in the U.S. with the $7,500 EV tax credits Americans get when they buy an EV. We're hearing that the Trump administration will be killing that in a few weeks, and if that happens, then it's going to be chaos. I think the whole EV market will be in even greater disarray then if that happens.
Yeah, and we actually kind of have a roadmap about what that might look like, because here in Canada, those EV, that the federal government's EV rebate program, the consumer-facing one, ran out of money and hasn't been refunded yet by the government. So there's currently no EV rebates for people buying electric cars in Canada, and some new data published by you just earlier this week, I believe, Tim, shed some light on how much the demand has really fallen off of a cliff since those rebate checks disappeared. What was the EV sales number looking like in Canada for the last month or so?
Yeah, well, in March, the numbers were down 44%, and it's a direct result of, the incentives, the federal incentives going away. We should also note that BC's incentives are going away, and Quebec's incentives were paused during that period. Now they're back, but in a much less generous form. It was very abrupt. I mean, we knew that at some point these funds would likely run out, but everybody thought there'd be a much longer runway. So with the abrupt end, it really sent the market in disarray. And I think these numbers are actually underreported to a degree, or could have been worse, is a better way to put it, because a lot of the manufacturers actually kicked in equivalent incentives to keep the sales pipelines going for the month. So companies like Hyundai and GM basically offered rebates for the amounts equivalent to what the rebates would have been from the federal and provincial governments. So that kept the taps open for a bit, but those were all temporary measures, and that's going to run out. We know that. When that happens, sales numbers will tank even more. It's going to get ugly pretty fast. So watch for April numbers, and particularly May numbers, when most of that's out of the system. It's not going to look good.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, so the March number, 45% downturn, even with the manufacturers themselves kind of backfilling some of those rebate checks. We're now halfway through May, so we'd expect the trend to continue. So brass tacks, let's get to the big picture here. All of these many factors point towards the goals that the government in this country has for EV adoption looking more and more unrealistic. The federal government still has this EV policy on the books. 100% EV sales by 2035. 10 years from now. So when you talk to people in the industry, Tim, what's the attitude towards that idea? Is that realistic? Is that future maybe fading from view?
Yeah, the short answer is it's everybody thinks it's a pipe dream, including proponents and advocates for the EV space and EV adoption. It's just not feasible. It's not going to happen, especially with the absence of rebates. I mean, we've seen demand crater. We've seen manufacturers pivot. It's just not going to happen. I mean, 20% adoption is supposed to happen in 2026. That's basically the cars coming out this fall. 20% of the ones sold need to be EVs. It's not going to happen in a non-rebated environment. It's just not feasible. And by 2030, 90% of vehicles on the road, that's 4 years from now, are supposed to be EVs, and by 2035, all of them are supposed to be EVs. It's not going to happen. The government should get moving to adjust those goalposts, or get rid of them altogether and let the market do its thing. Otherwise, I think they're going to be in for disappointment.
Now, that being said, as you've pointed out, the auto sector is well known for being quite malleable. They pivot quickly, right? So let's say through the U.S. midterms, a couple of years from now, the tariff stuff is largely settled. We go back to what is somewhat normal for operation of the integrated auto sector between Canada and America. Things could shift again, right?
They could, but every pivot and every shift requires a change in plans. And every time you change plans, it costs money. The only way you can make EVs less expensive is to be able to build them at scale. And when you're building them at scale, they're actually cheaper to build than hybrids or gas-powered vehicles, because there's less components in them. They're easier to build, but without that ability to plan for large-scale production of these vehicles, it's going to be very difficult for them to pivot. You can only pivot so many times before it's going to cost a ton of money. So,
yeah. And lastly for today, on prices, I can't help but notice all of our local dealerships here where I live are all advertising pre-tariff prices. Come in now. We have pre-tariff cars on the lot, but they'll only last for so long. And then used cars, we talked about this last time you were on the show, there will likely be some upward pressure on used cars because people won't be looking to buy tariffed new cars. So what's the outlook for prices like if you're in the spring market right now? Are they already ticking upwards, or are we still in a period where you can find some decent deals out there?
Well, we're probably at the very tail end of the period where you can find some decent deals out there. When we last talked, there was about 70-ish days of inventory on most dealer lots, and that's starting to run out fast. So watch for big price spikes in the spring and early summer for sure. And as the new models come in for 2026, which in many cases they do come in the summer, those are going to be priced with tariff impacts in mind. So things like the input costs of steel and aluminum, some of the parts, not all of them, but some of the parts, and also the tariffs that exist for vehicles that cross the border. It's going to get expensive for sure.
All right. Well, the news is the news. Sorry we couldn't have better news for anyone out there looking to buy a car this spring and summer, but that is the situation we find ourselves in. Well, Tim, as always, it's fantastic to have you on The Big Story. Thank you so much for joining us to help us make sense of some of these headlines and the future of the EV transition in this country. Very much an open question at this point. Hopefully we can check in with you again as we make our way through the year. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
And again, that is Tim Dimopoulos, the publisher of Automotive News Canada. He's our car guy here on The Big Story. And that is The Big Story for today. You can send us feedback on this episode or any other episode. Email us hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or leave a voicemail at 416-935-5935. We love hearing from you. You can find us on the Seeker app or wherever else you get your podcasts. Please remember to rate, review, follow, and share. I'm David Smith. Until next time, thank you for listening.
With McValue at McDonald's, you don't just get deals on the drinks. You get deals on McDonald's drinks. So when you're breaking a sweat, embrace the chill without breaking the bank. And when your crew is running on empty, keep your wallet full while refreshing the squad.
Ace the vibe check with drinks like lemonade, frozen Fanta Blue Raspberry, or any size drink for just $1.49. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.